Previously on Unclear. So I hope you'll join me in saying goodbye to this lovely place for the briefest period. Again, not forever. But this is where this podcast came to life. This is where this creative endeavor was birthed. And so it does mean a lot to me to not do it here for a little bit. And I hope I'm still doing it by the time I lie back down in this chair. Hello again, dear old friend. Welcome back. We're back in this chair. We're back in this room. We're back in Rome. We're back at it again. I hope you will forgive me the break. We came down strong off that tour throughout Canada and beyond. And I've taken a rest and recovery period that just so happened to coincide with the holidays and the end of the year. And here I am, it's January, it's a new year. I think it's time for a brand new start, a brand new season of Unclear. And I hope you're excited to join me on this journey. I hope it's a welcome surprise to see me in your inbox once more. And I hope that you haven't missed me too much or resented me too much that break that I took. I sort of left out some warnings there that I might have a busy time ahead of me. And the truth is that, coming down off all of that traveling and all of that, enjoying myself and the parts that weren't so enjoyable, definitely required some recovery time. But like I say, we're rested, recuperated, reinvigorated, and ready for this new year, this new season, and some new approaches. Okay, we've been reflecting a lot. That's the time of year, right? It's the holidays. It's the end of one year, the beginning of another. It's a very reflective time. And it just so happens that looking back on 2022 means looking back on all of season 1 of Unclear. And so I've been thinking about those ideas discussed and also the different locations we've been in and the different approaches and the different topics. And I want to come into this new set of episodes with some fresher ideas and, keeping the best parts, obviously, keeping the parts that you know and love and come back for so regularly, but also taking on some new stuff. So that's just to whet your appetite for things to come. But it is January, after all. And just like everybody else, I'm keen to get back into work, but, after so long not doing work and watching Netflix and eating and indulging, it takes a few full starts to just, get my footing and get back into the rhythm of things. So we're going to do that today. And I hope you won't resent me for those reasons. I hope you won't begrudge me the break too much, but also I hope you won't begrudge me what's going to be a slightly different episode where we look back at the best bits and perhaps the most relevant ideas that became somehow more relevant over the Christmas break, over the holiday break, the entire thing, all the way from the beginning of December right up until now, the beginning of January. I've been looking back, thinking back, and some of those episode topics that we enjoyed this past year suddenly have taken on a new light. I thought it was pretty important to check those out and maybe do something of a best of or a highlight reel. Let's look at it that way and see if we can build upon or, again, make relevant some of those ideas. So, again, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a part of the Unclear experience. Welcome to season 2. And we're going to kick off by remembering, the meme calendar Okay? One of my worst performing episodes. if we're just talking analytics, I thought this one would really pop off because it had a bunch of keywords in the title and in the description. Didn't happen like that. That's fine. But I found it especially relevant as we were approaching the end of the year, and especially as I was doing so much scrolling on various meme sources. So let's take a look at that now. Did I do the things this autumn that I really want to do, that I enjoy about autumn? Did I enjoy the leaves? And do I like enjoying the leaves, or did the internet tell me to enjoy the leaves? Well, it doesn't matter because it's over now, and now you should be enjoying Christmas and thinking about that. And everything feels so compressed because I'm just going really from like one event in the year, and each of those events expands out from its national holiday and its public holiday into this month-long affair, and then those month-long affairs butt up against one another, so you're just compressed between these. Maybe you have 12 events in the year, one for each month, and you just go bosh, 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 and you do all the memes in between, and you do all the preparation, and there's no cool down, so you're just endlessly crashing into the next event, the same ones that you did last year in the same order, and then all of time feels compressed because you're on that incredibly short feedback loop, and then you start to see. So yeah, I thought about this one a lot this break. There's a lot of time to scroll in the holidays, right? It's whether it's between indulgent meals or visits from extended family or festive movies. There's just a lot of time to kill. The weather outside is frightful. Don't know if you've heard that before. And, maybe the conversation with your extended family, if they are around, runs a little dry. So there's lots of time to scroll is what I'm trying to say. So I definitely found myself scrolling this festive period, and I was consuming not fresh memes, not exciting new content, not hippity hopping tickety talks from the youth of today, but the same regurgitated shit over and over and over again. And so I really thought of this fabulous episode of mine. My point in that one being that, there's time is feeling compressed over the course of the year because we got the Thanksgiving memes bumping up against the spooky season memes, right? Bumping up against the summer, right? The year feels small for that reason. But sort of fascinatingly, we broke the holidays into kind of sections. So just to immediately invalidate my point about one meme per month, we had this kind of build up to Christmas, post Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then the Christmas doldrums / build up to New Year kind of sections. And the memes themselves were so repetitive and so on autopilot. If you went to see a stand-up and the comedian was telling jokes of this nature, you would think that they were hack and bad, and you would not accept this comic, and you would ask for your money back, or you would leave in disgrace. But here we are on our devices hoping for a blessing of serotonin. And speaking personally, I do not receive, because what I'm faced with is water cooler chat, the meme I see over and over again. So like I say, it's split up into these sections, right? So we've got Christmas is coming, and people are like, oh, I'm barely over, indulging from Thanksgiving, and now I've got all this stuff coming for Christmas Day. And then once you've indulged on Christmas Day, there's that doldrums, as I say, but like from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve Day, both, like nobody knows what to do. And that is the kind of water cooler chat that I'm talking about. That has been true since the working week was invented and the Christmas holidays with it, right? Like those are the moments where it's like, oh, well, do I go back to work? Do I see my uncle? Do I watch Toy Story again? Or do I just scrape the tin of Quality Street for the last ones that no one remembers? This is a universal truth. This is part of the experience of the holidays, part of the experience of the year. So I'm on my iPhone to escape from these very doldrums. Why is it that I find myself surrounded by the meme version of this same sludge, which is itself pointing out this weird hinterlands of the year and this confusion around these days? Why are those memes, why do they exist? Isn't the point of memes, yes, we're like, I'm going to say the word memes 6,000 times here, but isn't the point that there's a moment of like shared experience, sure, but also there's just a little rush of like innovation, like the Twitter jokes, the screenshots of Twitter jokes. Surely there's something that's funny and new and exciting and a little bit inventive about them. But no. Here we are looking at something that has been talked about for 1,000 years, and here it is in meme format. And what I'm trying to say is, like, where I was talking about compression of time in the episode, here I find myself in the opposite situation. This expands time and really stretches it out and just makes these days that are already like feeling like they last too long, they're just worse, right? That's my main aggression, is against those particular ones that come right at the end of the year. But throughout December, maybe even starting in November, are the ones that say, you know, it's always two figures, and it's usually the two fucking sort of wiki cartoon guys in a knife fight. And it's like 2023 being X days away, other guy, me still processing, insert year here. Once upon a time, like the target year was 2016, right? A lot of dead celebrities in 2016. A lot of more bad news, like ISIS, right, was super hot. ISIS were popping off. ISIS were massive. And so, you know, we had to rely on good news that summer of like Pokemon Go existed. And that was the only thing we had going for us. That was like, so 2016 was like the worst year ever, but kind of in a way that, you know, we could just stand back and observe. Like none of us in the West were dealing directly with ISIS, nor were we, you know, closely related to any of these celebrities that died. But it just felt like this, like, oh my God. So, you know, when it came to a meme about still processing, 2016 was a year that took a lot of processing. I get it. But it was 2017, 18, 19 that we had this same meme format being like, me still processing 2016, X year just around the corner. And I'm like, okay. When you do it every year, it's not funny. It's predictable. It's hacky, right? And now 2019 is the year to slot in there because like 2019 was the last year before the bad times. So it's like me still processing 2019 because like we are all still processing 2020 and 21, right? And 2022. But now it's like every day of December, you're like counting down. It's like 2023 in 3 weeks, 2023 in 14 days, you know, like it's literally counting down. And it just like, surely we have moved beyond the purpose, if there were ever any, of these memes, because it's not funny. It's not deserving of my double tap. I'm not going to share this, boy. I'm not experiencing whatever rush of whatever tiny emotion I want to feel. And I'm certainly not escaping from my current situation by looking at this like copy pasted image. So yeah, I thought a lot about my meme calendar episode as I was just beset on all sides by this, just like I say, sludge, predictable sludge. And there's enough of that in December anyway. So why I had to deal with it on Instagram and Reddit, I have no idea. But, there's other things that we do at this time. Other relevant things that get brought up at the Christmas period. For example, gift giving. And if you've been a long-time fan, you'll know that way back right at the beginning, episode 2, I talked about gift giving and the emotional complexity of giving, receiving, and the sticky issue of, knowing what to give someone. And more importantly, when someone gives something to you, what are they saying about you? So let's check that one out. They don't want to divert their energy into actually understanding who you are now and facilitating that. They want to impress that upon you, that they knew you that one time, and they can always get you back to that moment of childhood joy. And I think that's what's fucking upsetting is realizing that also applies to me. That I thought that my dad would fucking vibe that Airfix kit. But that's me saying, Dad, wear your fucking owl t-shirt or I'll know that you hate me. Because I remembered from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that you like owls. So you'll wear it and you'll be happy. And you'll be happy when I get you the matching socks next year. Whew. Now, this is a tricky one because it's hard to admit this to you, dear listener, but I was reflecting on this episode and I was reflecting especially on that bit, that I came to the conclusion to there where, I realized that I was just as bad as the people that I was talking about. Because the conclusion I got to was to talk about how people want to behave as if they're giving you something good and they're showing care and love and attention. But in fact, they end up gifting you something that shows the opposite of those things. It shows love, but it does not show care and attention, right? Because it shows, there's some kind of absence of thought, in fact. And I show the example of, giving. I realized I was one of these people as much as I was insulted and hurt by these people because I gave my dad something that he didn't want and he never opened it. And that thing was an Airfix kit. And if you don't know what Airfix kits are, check out the episode. I explain them in great detail. But I think, like I say, it's very tricky to listen back to this episode because whilst I thought of the message of this particular podcast and I thought about, giving and receiving and love and care and attention, I went on to do the exact same thing one more time. Yeah, that's tough to admit, okay? But, I'll tell you the story. Perhaps you can sympathize, and then I can really share what I was actually thinking about. But I thought the crucial detail was that I'd given him this kit under the wrong context, right? I basically, when I sent it before, I just sent it in the post, hoped that he would get it. And I mean that I hope that he would receive it. And also I hope that he would get the joke and the joy of it and would enjoy doing it. And none of those things happened, and the Airfix kit remained untouched. So I didn't learn the lesson. No, I tried to learn the lesson in my own way, which is to think, oh, well, what this is actually about is context. And if I can just reframe the same gift, then it'll be a banger. So I not just doubled, but tripled down. I got 3 Airfix kits. And I decided to, having just talked about the doldrums of the year, this is the slow point of Christmas Day, okay? It's like we've done the presents, we've done the stockings, we've done the, calls to other people, we've done the food, we've eaten the whole lunch, right? We've had the whole thing, what the day is all about, really, for us. So we're in that time. It's like not quite acceptable yet to just put on a movie and fall asleep, even though that's what we all want to do. And it's not quite, early enough in the day that we can still be eaten. Like it's like we need to take a break, but we don't want to just veg out. And we're not really a games kind of family. So I've planned for this exact moment. I'm like, well, what's a good activity, a group activity for at least 3 of the 4 of us? And then my mum can take pictures of me and my brother and my dad all making Airfix, right? So I've got these boys, I've wrapped them up, I've prepared them special for this moment. I bring them down just when no one is expecting. Oh, no, new presents? More presents? Are you crazy? Oh my God, okay. This is so unorthodox, but we accept. They're unwrapped with fervor. They're taken in with grand excitement. Everybody's getting it. Everybody loves the joke. Everybody loves the nostalgia. Everybody loves the callback. Oh my God, Airfix. Wow, I haven't done these for years. Oh, they include the paint now? Wow, that's fantastic. Oh, and the glue as well? Oh, we'll have to clear a surface for this. Oh, I got 2 planes, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, there's planes, and then there's a tank, and Chris is like, oh, I got the tank, and we're all having a good time. And I'm like, okay, so we want to do these now? Nothing. Nobody moves. Oh, well, yeah, well, it's a bit early in the day. Maybe, I'm not sure I've got have we really got I don't know if we've got the table space wow, that movie was just about to. I'm like, oh no. I thought that this was it. I thought that if I just reframed it, if I just delivered it in a different way, I could pull this off and we could all Airfix together and have the greatest family time bonding moment of all. And I could be the gift giver supreme. No, I failed again. I truly fucked this one up. No one wants to do it. No one takes the bait. And then I'm like, well, I'd love to do it. Oh, I'd love to maybe start one like right now. That would be fun. Nothing doing. And let me tell you, I left that house a few days later, and those Airfix kits remain undone, untouched, and I would bet money that that's how they will remain into the future. It's a sad and sorry state of affairs. But again, I should have listened. I should have listened to my own episode. Now, I'm going to take the L, and I'm also going to just provision it a little bit and say, well, it was a long one, a long time ago, this particular episode. I think it was even episode 2 that I told this story. So, I had time to forget, and maybe I even had time to convince myself that I was doing the right thing. But isn't that the point of what I was saying? And if you listen back to the episode, as I have done, you'll realize that, the cynical and harsh takeaway that I came to is that what's happening in the core of these gift exchanges that are ill-placed and ill thought out, and I use the excellent and inexplicable example of like owl merchandise in the episode. And what I keep coming back to is, yeah, what's happening is that people ultimately don't want to expend the energy on like working out what's actually going on with you. And they kind of already have a thing in mind. Maybe it's something they want to do. Maybe it's something that they want to receive themselves. But it certainly seems to not be taking into account the truth of who you are as the recipient, who you are right now, and what's actually best for you right now. There's something about those gift exchanges that ignores that. And what I realize is that this doesn't just apply to gifts, in the physical Christmas giving sense. There's also a lot of, you're seeing people that you don't see in a while. Family and extended family and friends and relatives of all different descriptions. And, people that you love and care about and know you for time. But they only get the small updates and, they only get infrequent updates. And so they only get a little piece of the picture is what I'm trying to say. And yet, even though they're given that information, they kind of like are just reverting back to the old information that they have. So that's what's happening with those like kind of well-intentioned but poorly received gifts that are given. But I also found it to be the case a lot with advice. Okay? 2022 has been a rough year for everybody, for all reasons. But what I think has been super spicy hot this year are employment situations, whether that is like people have lost their jobs, like me, or they are themselves employers or business owners, and it's been a really rough year to try and do that. And also romantic situations. Like if you manage to make it through this year and you locked something down, like you got married or you got a house or you got a kid, amazing, good for you. But I am finding that the number of breakups that occurred this year is like a record high. And what I just experienced, I'm either hearing this myself or overhearing this, or hearing this secondhand is what I should say. When you tell someone about your breakup, and it's not someone you see all the time, it's not a close friend who knows you and knows how to respond and maybe is just there to like be a shoulder and hear the sadness of being broken up with and knows how to respond in that way. When it's someone who doesn't, like they know you from time, they go back, but they don't know you that well, and they're trying to give advice on your breakup and they're trying to give advice on your failing business, they end up saying something that is so incredibly tone deaf that their intention, which is just to obviously show care, show love, it is completely lost. And in fact becomes way more damaging and becomes way more... It obviously achieved the exact opposite. So you're like, just like you're receiving a gift and this person really wants you to enjoy receiving that gift, and you unwrap it and you go, this fucking fucker doesn't know me at all. I have heard so many pieces of advice and just thoughts that people have, or even just the core of the question themselves this Christmas period, that have been so insensitive and as to be just like the very opposite of supportive, so disruptive. I have heard people say, oh, that's so messed up that you're not together anymore. I thought they were the one for you. Okay. Okay, thank you for that information. Because I'm sure that the person who just got broken up with agrees with you, agrees that they thought they were the one. So what are you bringing to the table here by saying, I thought they were the one? because that is not a salve for the wound. That is salt in the wound. You're hearing from an external source that you're not crazy. They agree. They thought this was a locked-in situation, right? Or asking people, oh, are you going to get back together? Do you think there's still a chance for you guys? Like, this breakup is happening to this person, or has happened recently. There's a lot of different timescales. And they're just dealing with the fact that, like, they had hope in their lives for this relationship. And now that hope is lost. That hope is dashed and gone. And now you're asking of them, is there still hope? Like, what is a person supposed to respond to that? You know? And people's like businesses and work situations, being asked, oh, have you tried doing this? Have you tried putting this on your resume? Oh, when I was getting a job, I used to, and just like, that the intention is good. Like, this person has opened their mouth because they want to bring goodness into your life. They see that your situation is bad. They want to bring something positive to you. They want to show that they see you. But by saying something so off base, so ill thought through, they actually do the opposite and destabilize and insult and hurt and, make people not want to share those kind of details in the future. And it just amazed me how many times I heard this. Like, people would text and say, oh yeah, I just told my uncle about my breakup. You'll never believe what he said. And I think that there's a core and a shared idea there of, like, it's really important that if you want to show love and care and attention to someone, that you don't just focus on the love. You have to care enough to pay attention to the reality of the person that you're talking to. You have to deeply empathize, put yourself in their shoes and think, what would I actually want to hear? What's actually happening to me right now? And maybe even then, just shut up. Don't give that gift. Don't give that piece of advice. And just say, how are you feeling? And then you'll find out. As you should probably ask, what do you want for Christmas? And then you'll know how to give the right gift, So that really crossed my mind a lot this Christmas as people were giving gifts, and I was hearing about some friends' hilarious gifts and also their insensitive family comments on their breakups. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal stuff. But there was a different episode that came to mind when I was thinking about gifts a lot. And that was actually one of my hardest episodes to record and to listen back to, where I really talked about the difficulty of communicating about gender and sexuality in different contexts, in maybe your friend context and maybe your home context and maybe your away context, right? It was a tough episode, and I think I shared too many ideas. It was a long one, but there was something that stood out to me as I was doing some Christmas shopping from that particular episode. So let's check that one out. The reason it can be rejected is because people are approaching the idea of they as a new idea, but it's not. It's kind of a preceding idea. They is the core. We're all they. If I was to politely refer to someone I don't know, I would probably use they or them. Not for any reason to do with gender. It's just, again, it's a kind of sort of politeness in the language that we can be more general. And it's only later that we were like, oh, no, this camp is he, this camp is she, and never the twain shall mix. And so the idea of reintroducing they seems new, seems abrasive, seems fresh, but it's really just because we've spent so long driving these imaginary binary and opposite states apart. Again, this one's a toughie because it's really obvious to me, like going home, spending time in England, in pubs and clubs and watching TV and listening to comedians on TV, realizing that, again, the conversation is like just not there yet, and there's still a lot of like miscommunication and misinformation about using the word they and pronouns in general. I think it's an ongoing discussion that is happening in a bunch of places, and pretty much the same as when I was recording that episode and coming into it super hot. Like there's a different vibe in England, there's a different vibe in Italy, there's a different vibe in Canada, but I think the point remains of like it still remains strange to me that people react to the word they when really it can be considered just a polite and, if anything, higher order form of talking about someone than specifying he and she. And that became an increasingly difficult conversation because it felt like every time like that kind of gender description gets brought up, it gets immediately ridiculed. And it's kind of like, oh, that gender nonsense, that non-binary craziness. And, people talking about like, well, I know what I was when I was born, and that's because, and they usually refer to their genitalia. And that, again, it just kind of like ridicules the idea by, or eschews the idea by ridiculing it. And I use the word imaginary in that clip, which is not necessarily fair because, and I think this is where people react to the conversation about there is of course biological reality, which is as people point to their genitalia, that is obvious. And I think that's the thing here, is that there's no question that that's the case. Of course that's the case. Humans have reproductive systems, as do all things that have reproduction, and those are biological facts, and that's not in question. What remains in question is attributing strange and different things to those biological facts. And the conversation has to be, why should my genitalia or any other exhibiting of a biological truth have any impact on my social experience? Like, why should women end up doing this? Why should a man like that? And that is why I think the conversation around they and what is gender, not sex, why that is so important. Because as we, break glass ceilings here and there and strive for equality, that binary of he and she and forcing people into those realities, that's the imaginary part. And that keeps us it keeps us held down. It stops us from doing things, and it disallows us from doing things. And that's so obvious to me, again, when I'm like doing my Christmas shopping, and what I'm looking at are gendered toys, for example. Like, here's the boys aisle, here's the girls aisle. And of course, the boys aisle is sort of like trucks and superheroes and things that go bang and crash. And the girls aisle are things that are pretty and pink and sparkly and, like Frozen, probably. And I found it really difficult because, of course, little girls might buy things from Frozen and they might really enjoy that, and they might enjoy wearing sparkly pink dresses. And I found myself in conversations where that was treated as like, okay, so that's why we do it, because girls just love that stuff. And it's like, well, if the point of this conversation is, if you train girls to like that stuff from the moment they're out the womb, then of course they like that stuff. Like, children can like anything, and we teach them what's good, what's bad, what's whatever. And so if a girl is born and she's biologically a girl, and that, I would agree, is difficult to refute from a specifically anatomical perspective, there becomes almost immediately a choice to like, well, put a bow on her and dress her in pink and introduce her to the ideas that go on to her picking out Frozen toys and My Little Pony toys later in life. So it's really, to me, frustrating to have that conversation, because it's sort of like, well, look, she picked up the sparkly thing, so that's why she's a girl, and that's why all girls like the same things. It's like, well, no, it's highly likely that you as a parent, or her extended family, or the things she's seen at school, or the friends, her reality has told her over and over and over again that she likes these things. Maybe she just naturally likes these things, and that's fine too. But if you're just repeated the things that you're supposed to like, and you're dressed in the things that your parents think you might like from the moment you're born, then how can you possibly hope to find your own freedom of expression? And when people do, when people in their adulthood, in their later life, say, you know what, fuck pink sparkly things, like, why can't they refuse that? And when it goes beyond that and they say, okay, well, when you call me she, you lump me in with a whole bunch of things that I don't want to be associated with. So if you wouldn't mind thinking of me as a they and a not as a she, not as a he, but something other than, or even something higher order than, just think of me as a person. Doesn't that seem easier? Doesn't that seem better? Doesn't that seem like we're actually now talking about, well, this person could have any opportunity and they could do anything because they're not a girl and they're not a boy, they're a person. And so they can achieve and do and be, and they're not limited by pink and sparkly or monster trucks, right? There's just a whole open road. And again, I understand that if people start to ask questions about, like, I just feel it's really ridiculous to say, oh, well, this is a silly conversation or this is a nonsense conversation. Sex can't be argued. I mean, I'm sure there are people who genuinely believe that sex can be argued. But where I'm coming from personally, like, anatomy is anatomy, and so on. Genetics are genetics. That is not a conversation, because, like, genetics are also a whole bunch of other things that, like, don't really make an impact on our human beingness, right? So I don't think that anybody who's asking to be called they is really calling that into question. But the people who seem to push back against the idea of they are saying, well, how could you question that? Again, it's not being questioned. And to ridicule it, I think, is very funny, because the opposite lands us in a situation that I find is completely ridiculous. What I noticed, like, again, watching TV, watching the news, walking around stores as I was shopping for Christmas, is that anything approaching classically girl or considered to be weak thing has to be prefixed. If it's to be sold to a male individual, it has to be prefixed with man. So I'm thinking man bag, right? It can't be a bag, because that would be feminine. And that, for some reason, is bad and wrong and to be avoided at all costs. But then when it gets really ridiculous is man flu, right? And there's a lot of comedy about that, like making fun of man flu and how ridiculous it is, but it still exists. And I still hear men say, I got man flu. Like, why can't you just say, I got a cold? Why do you have to bolster yourself and describe it as something other than the average kind of flu, what girls get? Like, that, it to me is like what's so confusing about all of this is that we talk about people who are pushing the boundaries of gender and asking questions about themselves. We treat them as ridiculous and silly and other, whereas the absolute insecurity and feebleness you have to stoop to say, I haven't just got a flu, I've got man flu. It just betrays such a weakness of character and such an insecurity of self to say, the whole notion of my being is based on the fact that I'm a he, and he represents strong and macho and tough and gruff. And, you know, it represents the kind of soaps that are available at Christmas in the gift packs. They're all grey and blue, and they have like rugged textures, because somehow cleaning yourself is feminine. And again, we don't want to be that. We don't want to be a she, right? We don't even want to be moving across the sort of gender dial towards she. We want to be so sure of our gender identity that we get the rugged soap, and that we call it man soap, and we call it man bag. If we're going to get a bag for our little things and we're going to put our stuff in it, and it's going to have a zip across the top, like a bag, like a purse, it's got to be a man bag. I've never heard man purse, but I'm sure someone out there has said it, just to help men infected by this binary disease with their own egos, and just to help them come to terms with the idea, oh, well, I'm not doing something that girls would do because it's got man in front of it. Doesn't that strike you as a sickness of the mind, that you're so insecure about who you are that you have to describe it as such and just reframe it ever thus so that you can actually accept it in your life? And then you, of course, that would lead to a situation where you meet someone who's moved beyond the he and the she, and they've stepped into they, and that comes across as an affront to you. And so you have to ridicule them, because otherwise you'd have to ridicule yourself for staying in this little box with your man soap and your man flu and your man bag. You know? When the truth is that it's just easier and simpler and more equal and more fair for us all to be they, for us all to be people, for all the toys to be in one aisle, for the soap packaging that, it forms the gift boxes, for the drink gift boxes to be whatever, and not have these specific scents and flavors that reinforce some idea that gets us nowhere and places us in two opposing, aggressing camps. I mean, again, I feel like I could do another whole episode on this and just continue ranting about this, because it's, to me, a very interesting discussion. I have fairly low stakes in it, so I find it to be an interesting discussion, but I also find it to be an infuriating discussion when it's immediately just ridiculed, when in truth, as I say, I think the existing binary has so much in it that is so should be openly ridiculed, that I think that is the part that needs further examination. So we're back in the chair and happy to be here. But of course, before I left, I was a bit worried about coming home. And I was definitely musing on that a bit. So let's harken back to that episode now and see how we felt in that moment. And that can happen. That can happen in 2 weeks. That can happen on that vacation. Somebody can break up with somebody else and move out of there and, break their leg and whatever. Momentary and monumental things can happen, and then they just so happen to happen while you're away. And then you weren't there. You missed them. So have you missed out on something that may come to be fundamental and important? Like, whilst you were doing your thing and living your life over there, what were they doing back home? And have things changed so much as a result of that changing that you've lost something? You've lost a connection, maybe. You've lost some old memories. If I go back to Rome and, the restaurant that I used to eat at all the time, if that's closed down, I've lost something there, right? I've lost the opportunity to eat at this place where I have so many memories. I've lost the opportunity to take other people there. I've lost the other opportunity to relive them. And, it's those things that I worry about and have anxiety about and contemplate and make me feel sad and make me feel nervous about leaving in the first place. And certainly, you feel like to leave is to take the risk that things might not be the same when you get back. It's a big statement. It's a bold statement. Do I stand by it? I think so. Yeah, I think so. But the question has become, as I reflect on that statement, as I reflect on the episode and how I was feeling at the time and how I was feeling even in the episode where I was in this couch for the last time, the question becomes, what is the risk? What am I risking? Because the implication there is that, if I stay, things will stay the same. Do I want that? Do we want things to stay static and as they are? Because isn't that the irony there? We want things to grow and move forward and change and evolve. So what I'm risking, really, is that I just won't be present while that happens. And I talk about loss, and I talk about the fear of that, not being present, that creates a distance. yes, that's true. That there's a chance there that the distance will be great enough that you'll miss out on some element of how people who were present, or the other, elements that were present, how they all grew together. That's the part you miss out on. There's no will, that's true. I think so. But there's also opportunity there, right? Because if everything changed together in the place where you left, then maybe they didn't notice how things changed. They were present the whole time, and so it just seemed like life was continuing. Whereas for you, you left and then you came back. So you had the memory of the before, and now you're seeing the after. And you get this opportunity to see the contrast all the more clearly. You get to see what was and what is, because you've been somewhere else in the meantime. And you get this opportunity to time travel. And people maybe even get the opportunity to take that from you, and you're like, oh, wow, I've noticed this changed. And maybe they didn't. So now you're informing each other's growth in a new and different way. And it's just really interesting to me because I talk about loss there. But what I'm talking about is the loss. I talk about losing old memories, but that's not possible, is it? I have those memories. Of course I do. I think it's important that I clarify there that I'm talking about the loss of the opportunity to relive memories. But that's the same thing, isn't it? It's about staying in the same place and everything staying the same. And there's control in that, right? And so that feels comforting. But I think that I should pay more attention to the fact that I'm actively choosing to go, to leave, and then come back. I'm actively choosing to travel, to move around, to specifically to find new things, to have new opportunities, to take new chances. And when I come back, I tell people about how I grew. And then I talk to them and I find out how they grew and what changed. And so we're embracing and we're excited about and we're actively choosing growth and change and new things and opportunity. And so I know a lot of my content is about fear and anxiety, and that is a fear that I have is that missing out, things happening while I'm away. But I'm trying to see it, and I guess that I am seeing it in this other way, which is that all that is describing is that things aren't staying in one place. I'm not staying in one place. It's all newness. It's all freshness. And that's the energy that I want to bring into this thing. That's the energy I wanted to bring into the new year. It's the energy I want to give to you. It's the energy I want to bring into the new season, the new episodes. It's got to be about new things, new opportunities, new growth. Because I've been doing a lot of it, but I've been thinking about the fearful aspects of it. So maybe I should start talking more about the opportunities of it and the positive aspects of it. So that's what I think we're going to do. Welcome back.